What's up guys, it's Alex here back for a new video, and in this one we are going to be doing an overview of Cove. So like my other overview videos, this is not going to be a demonstration. I will do a demonstration later. Here we're just going to be discussing the strengths and weaknesses and some general strategies for playing Cove. And I would love to hear some tips from you guys as well, because as I've mentioned in my Inferno demonstration or Inferno overview, Cove is also another town that I'm not that experienced or good with. So if you guys happen to have your own tips or strategies that you utilize successfully as Cove, I would love to hear those. All right, so let's just get into this. So, Cove is a pretty cool town. It is the newest town that was actually added in the Horn of the Abyss expansion. So, it's something that was new to me when I got into competitive Heroes 3 a year ago. I did not play it, when I played the game when I was younger. As far as its strengths, it does have good heroes. Cassiopeia is a good starting hero. You start with 3 stacks of nymphs, and nymphs are pretty good if you can utilize them properly. They're really fast and they hit really hard. And the captain class overall has pretty good skills, a good skill progression, a good stat progression. And you do have some other interesting heroes like Eovatius, for example, who has a clone specialty, which allows you to get 2 clones the first time you cast it in a battle instead of 1. And if you combine that with having water magic, that can be really, really strong. If you can clone angels or wyvern or cyclops or something like that. I remember actually being able to do a Green Dragon's Break on 116 with Eovatius with basically no losses because of his clone ability. You also do have Corcus, who's an offense specialist, and he also has Pathfinding, which really helps as Cove. And as a captain, he's also going to get a lot of attack as he levels up, so that synergizes with his offense specialty that much more, so that makes him really good. The problem, though, with that, having Corcus and having Eovatius is you're usually not going to be starting with them, right? You're usually starting with Cassiopeia. Sometimes people start with Derek, but most often Cassiopeia. And to be able to main Corcus or Eovatius, you're going to have to get lucky and actually roll them in the tavern. Other heroes that are noteworthy are Jeremy. He brings you a cannon, and that's a 4,000 gold value for free, basically. And he also has the specialty of a cannon, which can allow him to do a really high amount of damage with it. And you do get to buy a cannon in the blacksmith for Cove as well, which is pretty cool. You have Zilar, who has a Forgetfulness as a spell, which is nice also, because it allows you to deal with breaks like this, like Cyclop Kings, much more easily if you can get Mass Forgetfulness. And you also have Miriam, who is a scouting specialist, and she can actually allow you to, she's really useful in the desert by, allowing you to see a lot of the desert if you can level her and get her expert scouting as well. And and you do have Derek, who, as I mentioned, is another start, and it is viable because it does allow you to take hives, but only a size 2 hive. We'll get into that just a little bit later. So I believe I'm not missing any kind of noteworthy heroes. So the other strength for Cove is it does have pretty interesting units and some pretty interesting mechanics. So I've already mentioned the Oceanids, who are pretty fast and hit really hard. You also have the Sea Witches that can be really annoying by casting Weakness and Disrupting Ray. So you can make 1 stacks of them, and if your opponent has 1 power stack, you can just take its defense down really, really quickly. You have Sea Dogs, who is actually the only unit that has 2 upgrades instead of 1. And they have the ability that's the accurate shot, which is basically like the death stare of the Mighty Gorgons. but it's ranged. They have a lower chance of being able to actually do the accurate shot than the Mighty Gorgons. It's only 3% per stack with an accurate shot, I think. Whereas Mighty Gorgons have a 10% chance. But it can still be really useful, especially if you're facing something like crystal dragons or maybe rust dragons or something like that. With that, let's say you combine that with tactics, and you may be able to get lucky and just shoot down the crystal dragons or rust dragons or what have you, without really having to take a lot of hits. If that accurate shot actually procs, and you get lucky with it, then yeah, that can help you save army. You also have the Nyx and Nyx warriors that have a really interesting ability. They reduce the whatever they're fighting attack. The Nyx warrior by 60% and the regular Nyx by 30%. So usually you do want to go for the upgrade, which makes them a lot stronger. So they can be really annoying to deal with as well. And you also have the Sea Serpents and Haspids. The Haspid is actually the strongest Tier 7, upgraded Tier 7 unit in a one-on-one fight. Now, they're usually not the most useful because they don't fly. They are pretty fast. They have speed 12, but they don't fly, and they're usually not going to allow you to outspeed, things like Archangels or Phoenixes, for example, or like some kind of dragons, like gold dragons. But they do hit pretty hard, and they have the poison ability, and they do have that revenge ability, which allows, even if something attacks them first, they retaliate. Even if their numbers were kind of taken down, they retaliate with nearly the same strength as the full stack. So it is a pretty interesting unit. And the other strengths would be the ability to take pickets and the ability to take conses. So Cove is really good with a Cassiopeia start at taking pickets. I do have a guide on that in my guide to taking pickets. It's a 2-part video. You guys can check that out. There's a guide on how to do pickets with Cassiopeia. With a couple of external nymph dwellings, she can even do a maxi picket on day 1. And she's also quite good at doing conses, because, especially with Bless. Cove does have a good chance at rolling Bless, and Nymphs and Oceanids are a really good target for Bless because they have a damage range from 1 to 3. And you can even do a size 2 cons with Bless on Cassiopeia, with the day 1 army. Usually you'll be doing it on probably day 2 or maybe a little later, because you will need Mage Guild and the Oceanid upgrade. But still, you can do those. All right, and now let's move on to the weaknesses. So the biggest weakness, and really what makes Cove kind of towards the bottom, at least on Jebus Cross, is the terrain. Overall, when you kind of take into account all I've mentioned in terms of their strengths, they look really good on paper, that they could be much higher, like at least mid-tier. But dealing with the swamp terrain is really, really challenging, especially when you take into account the fact that it is difficult to do hives as Cove. It is easy to do pickets and it's easy to do conses, but the problem with that is if you don't have pathfinding, if you don't have pathfinding boots or wings, you are going to have a hard time dragging the Cyclopes and the Angels through the swamp. So what that means is that you really need to have the pickets close to the road and the conses close to the road. So a picket like this, you'll be able to take without too much trouble. This cons, not too much trouble. But this picket is already quite challenging to chain out. But on top of that, the problem is going to be that once you get those Angels and once you get those Cyclopes, you still don't want to go far into the swamp with them. So let's say, for example, you farm this picket and this cons, right? And with that, then you want to start farming hives. And these 2 hives are kind of far into the swamp, right? And if you actually have to drag those Cyclopes and the Angels through the swamp without pathfinding or without the boots or the wings, you're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of movement. So chaining in the swamp with non-native swamp units is really, really challenging. So, let's say you find like an earth tome over here and you have to take it with angels without pathfinding or the pathfinding boots, you are going to spend a long time chaining for that. So that really is the biggest challenge as Cove. And really playing Cove is going to be a lot about how successfully can you actually deal with that swamp terrain, right? So usually that means, trying to do pickets and conces that are close to the road, and then trying to snowball hives and trying to not bring non-native swamp units far into the swamp if you don't have pathfinding. And really, that is kind of the main glaring weakness, and Cove, because of that, is kind of in the bottom on Jebus Cross, a little bit better than Inferno, but probably worse than Stronghold. If it wasn't for that, Cove would be much better. And like when you compare it with, for example, Fortress, right? Fortress also has to deal with a swamp terrain, but it has a much easier time doing hives. On day one, you can do a size 3 hive with Fortress, whereas as Cove, you can't really do it. With Cassiopeia, the problem is that the nymphs are glass cannons. You really have to know how to fight with them well. The advantage is that they are fast and you usually can avoid getting hit, but in hives, you cannot do that, and your nymph stack will just disappear. You can do hives as a Derrick start as Cove, but you can only do a size 2 hive on your day 1 army. So yeah, that is kind of the main problem, is that as with the swamp terrain, you want to farm hives, and you can't really do that as Cove, right? And a couple of other weaknesses that you do have is you don't have the best chance of rolling Earth Magic also. So if you need that, I have actually gotten lost games as Cove before because I just could not roll Earth Magic. So that can screw you sometimes. And also the tier 7, the upgraded tier 7 units are pretty difficult to build. So while you do have Nyx that do make up for that, usually you see Cove build Nyx and Nyx warriors. You don't see the Sea Serpents and Haspids that often because they are pretty challenging to build. Alright, so that is about it for the strengths and weaknesses. So now let's get into kind of the strategies that we can utilize as Cove. So as I've already mentioned, going for pickets and conces is certainly viable. You just have to be smart. First of all, you have to, they usually have to be close to the road. And you usually don't want to be dragging those Cyclops or angels through the swamp, once you do get them, right? So for that reason, also, if you can find pathfinding boots or wings as Cove, or, get a good pathfinding hero, that is a pretty good advantage, because that will allow you to negate that penalty, especially with the pathfinding boots or wings, because you can pass those to any hero, right? So that would really help. So if you see pathfinding boots or wings as Cove, that is usually a pretty big argument in favor of actually keeping the map as well. And so the other way to play Cove, if you don't go for pickets or conces, or, you can go for pickets and conces first, the other option would be to go for dwellings. And usually that would be the Nyx dwelling. So building Nyx, going for Nyx dwellings plus building them in your town, and with that, going into hives and snowballing hives. So a map like this, for example, is pretty damn good for that, actually. If you find this Nyx fort, you take that, you build Nyx, you upgrade them, then you can start snowballing the hives, like these 2 hives that are close to the road, then these 2 hives, and then these 2 hives, and you would not be incurring the terrain penalty because you would be carrying just your Nyx and your Wyvern to snowball that. So I would probably say that's one of the better strategies as cove, because if you can snowball hives, if you can figure out a way to do that, then you're not going to be facing the terrain penalty. So you're basically going to be playing fortress, right? The only difference there is that you're not going to be able to upgrade your wyvern to monarchs, but that's not so bad. So those are kind of the two basic strategies, I would say, in a nutshell. So either go nicks or other dwellings into hives, or go for pickets and conses, or pickets and conses into hives as well. So mainly that's what you want to do as cove. Like I said before, if you guys have other strategies, if there's something else that you guys have done successfully that can work as cove, I'm all ears. I would love to hear those in the comments below. But for now, that's all I've got to share in this video. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, for more Heroes 3 content, do check out my Twitch stream. The link will be in the video description below. And I will see you guys in the next video. So peace out.